So now we talk about non-duality, and really non-duality is so simple. In anything that's happening there is beingness, and then in that beingness there's either a person that appears and complains and comments on what's happening and wants a different experience, a better experience, or thinks this is the best experience, or that doesn't appear. When that person appears, it can either give a high experience as, yes, I'm in the right place, this is the best experience ever, I want this experience to last forever, and it can either give a high to the experience, or it can give a low, this is not the right place, I don't want this, I want to be somewhere else. What tends to happen is the older and older that illusory self becomes, the more and more negative it becomes, and it has less and less of the high experiences. So there's less and less of, yeah, I've got it, and more of bitching and moaning about what's actually happening. This is very logical, because the flow of things is wild and free to be as it is. And so again and again, the illusory self is going to come up against life, which isn't appearing in the way it expects it, and isn't maintaining the pleasurable sensations. So it's naturally going to get more and more negative, because it's going to get more and more knocked and bashed by the flow of things. The flow of things will keep letting it down. It will keep losing that which it loves, and it will keep not getting that which it expects. And that's just the way it goes. And if the human body was alive for 500 years, every human body would wake up, I'm sure, in that lifetime, because it would become so obvious that what you want is not in the movement of things. Things are just moving. And what you want is not in a sensation, a feeling, an experience. And you'll just keep, the stories will just keep repeating, and it will be so obvious it's not about what you think is happening. It's not about the highs and the lows of the experience, whether it be an awakening experience or a really love blissful experience or a really low negative experience. The person, and often I can sound quite harsh, because somebody might have a high awakening experience, and I'm equally not interested in that. I'm not interested in the low experience or the high experiences. And it will become so obvious, if the body was alive for 500 years, that all it's doing is trying to make experience higher by repeating old experiences and repeating how it's got there, or make it lower and repeating negative experiences and how it's not got there. It's just the same old thing appearing again and again and again. And eventually that addiction to the high will die, because it will be so obvious that it comes with the low. And that you can never keep the addiction to the high. The high and the low are the same thing. You can never keep it. Whatever you think is it, you can't keep. Even if you think it's an awakening experience, a blissful love. If you think it's about you awakening, you will always lose it. If you think it's about you having certain experiences, you'll always lose it and be disappointed. It's just about being, and being is absolutely free and in love with everything that's appearing, without that separate person that thinks it's interfering with life and controlling life. It's just that simple, but that has to play out by itself. I cannot teach you that happiness is not in the flow of things. I cannot teach you that. That will play out by itself. The illusory self will get less and less interested in itself. It will become bored with itself. It will become bored with trying to maintain things, with trying to make your partner a certain way. It will get so boring, this. It will become, it will be uninteresting trying to run away from fearful experiences. You'll be like, I never want to fly on an airplane, I hate airplanes, they scare me, and then life will make you fly on an airplane all the time, and you'll become bored with feeling scared. You'll be like, oh, here we are again, fear. It's just fear. You like the whole interest in that person will dissolve on its own. It's not its own efforts. It's just the natural flow of things, the growth of this illusory self. And if you watch a 9-year-old child or a 10-year-old child, they're so desperate to be someone with ambition and drive and ideas about themselves and what they're going to be and what they're going to get. They really want to be something, and it will grow and grow and grow, and it will go through many phases, highs, lows, and then eventually it will get to a point where it's just bored with itself, and then it will crumble. But this isn't something that any speaker, that any activity can make go faster. It naturally happens on its own. It's a process like the trees losing their leaf in the autumn, like the flowers growing up. You can never know where you are. Who would know where they are on this process? You can never know if you exist or don't exist. That's nothing to do with you. You is an experience, not the experiencer. The you doesn't know anything about experiencing or experiences because it is an experience. So even if it pops up and says, okay, yeah, this weekend at Lisa's I had the most liberating experience, it can't know that. It is the experience. It cannot know that. It's a moving experience, the sense of self. So an experience can't know the experience. The beingness, it's not the beingness knows the experience like you imagine either, but beingness is and is always there, and it's not knowing it like you imagine. It's not registering like you imagine, like some people call beingness all-knowing, but I sometimes think that's too similar to the person. Not that it matters, I mean, it's so hard to talk about anyway. I don't mean to criticize other speakers, whatever way works. But beingness isn't knowing it like I know it in time, but yet it is experiencing. It's hard to, it's not registering as such, but it's experiencing. This is appearing. But you can never know it as a person, because that person is already appearing in it. It's already part of the experience. Wow, from such quiet, gentle monks to... Where did it come from? I was all ready for my second sleep.
Woman.
Sorry?
Woman.
Well, don't make me laugh. I need a toilet. Coffee toilet now.
Yeah.
So hi guys on Ustream. Morning. If you guys want to ask a question, you have to call in. I won't answer written questions in live talks, so you have to call me on Skype. I might not see it because I'm not looking at the computer, so just send a message if I don't see it. Huh. It's your birthday.
No.
No? Oh, there's a different one. There's a different Petra. I get everybody's birthday messages, so I normally find out people's birthdays on Skype. So an experience, this is really amazing, cannot know the experience. The person is an experience, but it gets so caught up in believing that it knows its experience.
Or changing it.
Yeah, and it can't know the experience. It is an experience as soon as it goes into time. That's okay though if it wants to change it, but it's a hopeless game.
But if you think about the experience, then you're already in time.
It's not, yeah, but there's nothing wrong with thinking about it. That doesn't necessarily need to be a personal activity. Like thoughts will appear, because that's part of the functioning of the body is to think. But it's just when that person is taking it to be serious, a truth, and to be your thought. Thoughts will always appear, but they're always illusionary. So thought might come up, it's cold in here. So
It's cold?
No. So that thought might come up. But this is the great thing, is that if you then begin to visualize, if you then begin to ask the room, everybody else will have a different opinion of it. It's never a solid thing, a thought. But the person takes thoughts to be true. So the things that the person tends to take to be true is they're an asshole. and then it's like flat. So one person could do one thing, you could have 20 people watching, and then 20 people then write their response to that one thing, and there will be 20 different responses. It's like there's a chemical reaction that happens, produces this thought, and then that's the way that this is seen. But that's only lasts and stays for a person, and then the person will fight for the way that it sees the world. When somebody's not taking life to be personal anymore, then that thought will just come and go freely, and life isn't caged to be the way you think it is. It's just a thought that's passing like everything else, not a reality. The personal energy, and in this room, like I remember doing a talk at, my mum's a governor in England, which is, they work for the NHS. When you're retired, you do it as voluntary work, and it's a way of like it's a way of the community making sure that the NHS is, it's like an outsider watching the NHS. So you go in as a volunteer and you are watching and being in the meetings, making sure that the NHS doesn't do terrible things, or if they are terrible things, they can report it. And my mum does this, and she invited me in to talk about mindfulness, and I was like, well, I don't really talk about this, but I'll give it a go. And I was trying to tell people that they think, and they didn't understand that they think. This was amazing to me, because I'd been into this subject since I was in my teens, so I'd forgotten what it was to not realise that I think. They thought that those thoughts were just reality, who they were and who the other was, and they had no awareness that there was thinking happening. So it was like, and this took me half an hour to work out. Well, actually, I didn't work it out. I was like, wow, these people are really hating me. And then Laurent, my boyfriend at the time, was sitting behind me, and he tapped me on the shoulder and he was like, Lisa, they don't realise they think. And I was like, no. No, and then he took over and he began to explain to them that the thinking's happening, and the thinking is creating an experience. It's not who they are, and what they think isn't the world. And they were like mind blown. They were like, I think. They understand they think as in working, functioning thinking, but the experience of themselves and the outside world was not a thought to them. That was not a thought. That was the truth. Whereas here, it's quite obvious that those thoughts are happening, but sometimes those thoughts grip on and they become a truth, and then sometimes they're not. But it's obvious that there's thoughts appearing, giving us a perspective on reality that isn't real. It's just a perspective. And what I would call the end of suffering is when those thoughts are totally free and there's nothing grabbing onto them anymore. So a thought could appear, because thoughts will still appear, like, they might not appear like she's a bitch, actually, but there might be something like a thought coming up of, God, I wish they would stop talking or something. But that's not taken to be any reality, and it's not taken to be a happiness. Like, that's not taken to be a freedom. So the thought comes up, I wish they would stop talking, but then it goes, and then there's not somebody trying to stop that person talking or stop that happening. It's just life, it's beingness, it's just pain. But there's not an energy. There might be a moving way if they can, but most of the time you can't. When someone's on a roll, you're like, oh, yeah, like whatever it is. So it's not, these thoughts are not taken to be somebody's source of happiness. It's just movement happening. Do you know what I mean by somebody's source of happiness? Mm-hmm. It's like, it's beingness. Your freedom is the fact that it's appearing, not whatever the person or the thinking is saying about it. The personal energy has claimed onto these things and thought, my happiness is when I'm around people that don't talk too much, or I'm around people that are more silent, or I'm around people that are more aware. And then they take that to be a reality, like that could give you anything else. This gives you everything. The aliveness, which is no thing and everything. And that's what this body-mind mechanisms describes as liberation. Others might describe it as something different. It's the end of the one that holds on to anything. It's just life happening, including the thinking. Include anything. So this music's put on, it's not what's expected, and that's what's happening. your freedom is it. It's not then wishing that Lisa would speak and how dare she take my money and then sit there and do nothing. What a lousy teacher.
What a good observation. What a good observation.
You can't make me laugh, Gert.
Sorry. It's almost coffee time.
Yeah. I'm just going to hold out a few more minutes. No, I'm joking. We're going to have coffee time in a few moments.
Maybe better.
Could you say that being aware of things, of whatever, of thoughts,
No, that's not it. But that's a good way to start talking about it. But that's not it. I mean, you talk to these NHS people to talk about being aware of thoughts is a good way.
Yes.
Yeah.
But could you say that being aware of is just moving from the inside to the outside?
Huh?
Yeah.
I love it. Like I must speak so crazy as well.
It's like having the me that is not the me, but just me that reflects everything to itself, and then that you. Yes.
But there's when I hear someone saying being aware of it, I always imagine what the Buddhists taught me. And in a way, this is a great way to begin to start talking about it, if you've got to be aware of your thoughts. But then the person that's aware of them is still a thought. Yes. It's the dissolving of the person, because who is that that's aware of it? Like, this is in a way, you could say it's the end of awareness, because it's just life happening with no self-awareness. It's the end of that self-awareness. Yeah. And then inside and outside stops. I know what you mean about inside, but I mean, we could talk about it, and I think now, because of YouTube and everything that happened, there's so many different speakers out there, and I can't melt into too many languages, otherwise I'd become schizophrenic when I talk. But I can understand from so many different perspectives as how people speak. This is incredibly hard to talk about, because you're talking about an illusion, almost through an illusion. Like, these words aren't it. So it's really hard to try and point to. You're pointing to invisibleness, amness, something that you cannot see, you cannot comprehend, and yet it's everything, and you're trying to talk about it in time. To somebody that's looking in time as well, it's like an impossibility. So there's infinite amount of ways that you could put this, infinite, and I can understand why someone would go from the angle of being aware. That's originally how I got into it with the Buddhists. You've got to be aware of yourself, and I was like, right. And we used to have to do counting. Terrible. It was so painful. It was like you had to get to
Counting thoughts?
No, counting. So it was like you had to breathe in and go 1. And then as it touched your nose, 2, and you had to get to 10, and then you had to start again. And what would either happen is that by 4 you'd forgotten you were doing it, and then you're off somewhere else, or you'd get to 100 and be like, oh fuck, I should have stopped at 10. Like, it's a really it's quite hard to do. And I'll be like, right, I'm going to be aware of my breathing, and it's such agony to be aware like that. It's a really painful thing. But actually that's not what they meant. But it's a good way to begin to start talking about this. Like, it wasn't that painfulness of being aware. Or it's ultimately what they're trying to talk about is the illusion of self. But it's so hard to talk to someone who's dreaming. It's incredibly hard, because as soon as you don't do what they want, so as soon as you don't validate them, they go, I hate you. like that's the first thing that comes up as soon as you it's like an incredibly delicate thing, because if you're too harsh with them, then I hate you, you're an asshole, how dare you speak to me like that, she's not liberated, bad teacher, she's a fake, why does she speak to me like this, she just wants to have power and be above other people. So as soon as you don't validate their story, that's one way that it goes. And then if you're then speaking to them in which way that's resonating with them and they like, then they love you, and you're higher than them, and you're better. They're not higher than, yeah, they put you higher than them, and they put you up on this pedestal. It's really difficult dance. So I can imagine so many people try so many different ways to try and talk about it. And I think that with the Buddhists, it was just sit down, shut up, and they gave me some silly exercise, and I was like, okay, I'm going to master this and be the best of everyone. 3 and I'm off. I rarely ever got to 10. I'd either go to 100 or 3. Yeah. Got break time now. After we. So we just take till about 22, so 20 minutes of break.
Yeah.
Just coffee and tea.
Yeah.
I just like, yes, there's something of the fish involved. You know that,
Again. Try it. He doesn't know.
That's also
Everybody has to try. Everybody has to try this kaiser.
Oh, yeah.
That's not actually there's nothing more beautiful than black and white. There's no contrast, but it's more interesting.
Leon, je hebt goed opgelet, hè? Ik zie niks. Je hebt goed opgelet.
En dat weet ik ook niet. Ik zie niks, maar alles wat je niet ziet heeft wel een effect.
Yeah, but it's with white, black and white, and certainly it's like they do everything completely not talking about nothing. Then you can do whatever you want with your, because when you take a picture from here, from the light, it's dark. But it's just by playing with everything and that you can. If you take automatic.
So guys, we'll be back in about 20 to 12, which is 20 minutes from now.